My name is Grace Johnson. I am a cell and molecular biology and genetics student in the College of Arts and Sciences, and my project is called COVID-19 Vaccine Misinformation, Mitigating Mistrust in the Science Community and Public Health Initiatives. And my project was advised by Professor Trevor Siggers. When deciding what to do for my Kilachand thesis project, I went back and forth about what would make the biggest impact before I graduate. And obviously one of the most prevalent current events going on right now is the COVID-19 pandemic. And when I was doing my initial research, I was wondering if the conversation would change about COVID-19 and whether that would affect what I can do or not. And to my surprise, most of the conversation about vaccine mistrust and mistrust in the science community has kind of prevailed throughout the entire research process. And while I was doing this, there have been many reasons that have kind of stuck, such as political reasons that people don't want the vaccine, mistrust in the science community, which I'm going to focus on, and also fear for special conditions, such as different things with your health, such as pregnancy and autoimmune disorders. So studies showed in my initial research that there was a direct correlation between the rated trust towards a given study and a recommendation, such as one from a public health official, and the level of education that a person has in a particular area, such as simply a science education from high school or a degree in science, such as biology from a university. And then also a lack of cohesive science education resources in K-12 schools had an impact on this as well, based on region. And then another big factor that they found was that the scientific articles and papers are written at a very high level that isn't necessarily digestible for most people with anything below a college biology degree. And so in order to determine which topics about misinformation that I wanted to focus on, I did an analysis on Twitter, following common trends using the trends over time sections that they have on the app. And I found a lot of different topics, but most of them surrounded in two main areas, which were the risks of the vaccine in general, which people were discussing with not a lot of scientific basis, and also antibodies and booster efficacy in general, which tended to boil down to a general conversation rejecting the vaccine without any trending scientific studies or things like that to back them up. So when I found all this information, I created a couple goals for my project and the deliverable. I wanted to create a cohesive source of digestible information that anyone with a background between just a general high school biology degree and then also a college university degree would be able to understand easily. And in this, I wanted to focus on the risks of the vaccine and how antibodies and boosters worked in a way that would allow people to make informed decisions about their health and in order to encourage vaccination. And I also created a website in order to deliver this information because I figured that would be the easiest way to share. So this is the front of my website. I wanted it to be informational and user-friendly. So I did a lot of different diagrams and tried to keep the conversation kind of casual while having everything backed by a lot of scientific studies. So for example, in my risk comparison section, I talked about blood clots, so as an example. And I wanted to create kind of catchy things that also got the point across. So, for example, I had one stat that was, according to recent studies, you're 285 times more likely to get a blood clot on a 6-hour flight from Boston to California than after the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, based on 2 different studies that I looked at. And then here's an example of one of my diagrams that kind of showed all the different risks kind of laid out next to each other, which kind of helped create some perspective. And then I put all of the sources below so that hopefully that would be kind of encouraging for people to look into it if they had questions about where I got the information and just to kind of back up the stuff I was saying. And then there is another example. I did intubation as well, and you can see another example of the graph. And then some other risk comparisons on the website are infertility and miscarriage, death, and casual effects of alcohol use, all compared to the different risks of the COVID-19 vaccine. In the antibodies section of the website, I wanted to kind of help explain antibodies in a level that was would allow people to read these studies in a more effective way and kind of understand what was going on when they get the vaccine. So here's an example of one of the diagrams that I made, and it shows a relative amount of antibodies that you get in your body size with a size comparison with one vaccine, a mild infection, the second dose of the vaccine, and a severe infection. And I wanted to emphasize that you can get almost as many antibodies and protection with as between a mild and severe case of COVID without ever having COVID, which is super important in order to avoid the risks and all the side effects of that. And then that's just one example, but there was also data about how long antibodies last, the role of booster vaccines, and descriptions of the life and actions of an antibody in a kind of a creative way to hopefully keep people's attention and also just make sure everyone can understand it. And overall, my takeaways are that vaccination is obviously incredibly important during a pandemic, and I think that people deserve to make very informed information about their health, and that needs to be more accessible and digestible for everyone. And in order to do this, we need more education and efforts to increase public health knowledge so that people can make these informed decisions, because this not only helps an individual, but also everyone else, if everyone has herd immunity, hopefully, in the future. That's all.
Questions for Grace?
Very, very cool project. I think it's definitely something that's been on a lot of people's minds, and it's been a source of like a lot of confusion for a lot of people in the country and around the world. My question, I know another one of the things people like talk about with vaccines is like the long-term risks. And so when you're talking about risks, what do you say to the narratives about like we don't know the long-term risks, so there's no long-term studies because it hasn't been out more than 2 years?
Yeah.
Is that addressed in your website, or if not, like how would you address it?
I haven't addressed it specifically in the website because there really isn't any research yet, so I wanted to find things that I could compare it to with actual numbers that people could hopefully like look at, but I guess that would definitely be a direction that would be good to go in the future to expand the project once more sources come out. Yeah, that's pretty much that's it.
Grace, I thought you did a great job of taking really complex information and, as you said, making it relatable to an audience that doesn't have an advanced degree in biology. Do you think Joe Rogan would understand?
I hope so. Some of my inspiration for this project came from some family members that have similar thoughts. So, yeah. No.
On a related note, how do you decide what is the most effective medium for conveying your message? So you chose bar graphs, right? And where do you think that lies on a spectrum of, say, testimonials or other media that one might use to be persuasive?
I guess I just thought that this might be the least biased way to show data, because I was worried that if it was testimonials or like things that people were talking about, that it would be something that people wouldn't necessarily believe. So I just wanted to be able to put it just kind of straightforward with kind of no way to change it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I guess I think that there might be people who question that they inherently question numbers
Right.
and see those as the vehicle for the lie, whereas testimonials are not. And it's a very big question, obviously, for the way we convey information and make arguments. And I was just wondering what you thought about that. So.
Yeah.
Okay. Other questions for Grace?
Hello, Grace. Amazing presentation. So my question was kind of like surrounding your Twitter analysis. Obviously, like, various political factions have an outsized role in spreading vaccine misinformation. How did you see that play out in your analysis at all? Did you account for that, or just in the way you proceeded? Was that not really something you were focusing on at large?
Yeah, I kind of did want to focus more on the data side of it. So when I was looking, and also fear was one of the main points that I wanted to kind of address in my project. So I didn't focus as much on the politics, because I'm not super qualified to speak on the political side. I'm not, yeah. But yeah, I looked for tweets that focus on like fear and like a lack of understanding, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, thank you.
Yeah.
Any remaining questions for Grace? If not, please join me in thanking her again for a great talk.